So then they pull me into this apartment, and I'll never forget these two Jamaicans, and they beat the daylights out of me. They beat me so bad that they literally wanted to kill me. And I was there. We went to public school, and as we were there in public school, John B. Hood, I began to get caught up in the gang lifestyle and gang violence.
How old are you at this time?
Like 13 years old.
13 now?
13 going on 14.
Okay.
And I only remember that because once I escaped from there, because I didn't stay there, I found a way to get out. Because my life, I was like so broken, so dysfunctional. I did not want to be there. I didn't want to be in this place where I didn't know nobody, because I was abandoned again, now by my dad. My mom abandoned me the first time. Now my dad's abandoned me to this orphanage place.
He actually took you there?
Yes, and signed over his rights to the state of Texas. And now I'm property of the state of Texas in this orphanage. And I said, I'm not going to stay here. I found somewhere to stay, and I escaped from there, and I never looked back. And the reason why I say my age, because during that time you had to be at least 15 years old to work, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember being in one of my friends in school, because you had the typewriters back then. And I remember asking her, do you have a birth certificate so that way we can make a copy and then I could type over it and then we can make another copy and then that way I can get a job. And I remember my first job was Luby's right there on Jim Miller and 30. I was not going to stay, I did not want to stay stuck, and it just began to accelerate. Even though I thought I was advancing, really in reality, I was hurting myself. Because I was like a child I was childless. I mean, I was an orphan, like bouncing from place to place, and in that, I remember staying at one of my friend's house. Can I steal one of those napkins right there?
Yeah.
I remember staying at one of my friend's house, and I just remember I got introduced to this guy that was actually a drug dealer at this point. And I remember him always telling me, one day you're gonna be my girlfriend. And I was like, whatever, this ain't gonna, I'm a kid at this point. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting introduced to my son's father, and it was just an abusive relationship. I'm pregnant with my son. I ended up getting this job at this warehouse, working from 6 at night till 6 in the morning, trying to survive 7 days a week. I worked all the way up until the day before I actually gave birth to my son.
Really?
And when he was always constantly putting his hands on me, and as a broken person, you don't know how to defend yourself because you've always been left defenseless. Mm-hmm. And I remember getting introduced to this guy that was a drug dealer. And I was like, you're my ticket out of here. You're my way out. I have to make it work here because with you, at least I have stability. At least with you, I have somewhere to stay. I don't have to be homeless. At least with you, I can have money and I can take care of myself. I just kept thinking, and that's childish. It's a childish way to think, but that was the way of survival for me at that point, right?
Right.
So then I get introduced to the drug dealing lifestyle, and I was down with it. I mean, I am a very loyal person. So anything that I did and do, I'm loyal to it. I'm true. Like they say, I'm true to the game. Mm-hmm. And I was very true to the game. I ended up, getting caught up in the lifestyle, drinking and getting high and partying and the friendships and the money. And I just remember being introduced. It was like I was constantly introduced to people that were high rollers. And, it was just very dangerous all the time. And it was like always living on the edge. But there was like a part of me that was always on the edge. And I think I would just always push it to the extreme just because of the dysfunction and the hatred that I had on my shoulder. Because it was like I was a ticking time bomb. Everywhere I went, I had a chip on my shoulder. And I didn't care if it was a man, a woman, whoever they were. I had a chip on my shoulder. And if anybody that wanted to take, that wanted to just take it, just dab me some kind of way, that would be it. It would be a reason for me to get out there and just put my hands on you and take every form of hatred that I had towards anybody out on these people. And it wasn't even about them. It was just about the anger and the hurt that I had inside that so many people had did to me. But now I'm going to do it to someone else. Now I'm going to make you feel that hatred and that pain that I feel inside. And now I'm not going to even look back to do it. And I remember that, and being in this lifestyle, the guy that I was with ended up getting introduced to heroin. And when he got introduced to heroin, I was a big weed smoker growing up. So to me, I like the downer. I used to like the downers, to be, mellowed out and be chill and stuff like that. But this guy, for a whole year, he was doing heroin. And I never touched it because I had never been introduced to heroin. I had been doing weed and coke, crack, whatever. But even prior to that, throughout the times of shifting from place to place, there's so many layers that you can't even talk about in just a small segment. There's just so many layers to just the things that I had to deal with and live through in the streets, stories, where I was, before I ended up getting over here with the guy that I was with that was a drug dealer. I was living in North Dallas, and it was during the time of crack hitting the city of Dallas. And I remember these Jamaicans kind of took me under their wing. That's why I said when I got introduced to this drug dealer, I was like, this is my way out. This is my ticket, because I would have to be from place to place and survive wherever I was at and give up whatever I had to give up to have somewhere to stay. And I remember staying in this one crack house that these Jamaicans ran that show. They ran that whole property. And I remember them giving me work. They said, you can stay here, but you got work. And it wasn't like a work like you go clock in 9 to 5. No, it's like a work. Here's some dime bags and some 20s and some 50s, and you're gonna go get post up on that stairwell right there, and you're gonna sell my dope, and I'm gonna give you so much out of it. So that was my stay, And I remember being there, and at this point, I'm just trying to make a living, trying to find a way to survive. And I remember I ended up going back to Garland for a night, 2 nights, stay with one of my friends from school because I wanted to go visit her. And I remember coming back the next day, and there was this guy there that used to roll the property, and his name was Juice. And I remember we always clicked really well. He knew I was a youngster. He knew I was a kid. He never crossed the lines as far as like trying to make me feel like I was obligated to give him something. I was the one that sold the dope, so he knew that if he had me as his little road dog or whatever, that he would be able to get anything that he wanted. And I was there, and I would give him cuts, and I would give him this or that. But he was always getting high. He always had prostitutes with him, and it didn't bother me any because I was so adjusted to that life, so it was nothing. So we'd bounce from, apartment to apartment. And I remember this particular day, I had just got back to the apartments, and as soon as I walked up the stairwell, he caught up to me, and he was like, hey, man, you got to get me out of here, this and this and that. And I said, what's going on? But before I could even look up, the Jamaicans are on the other side, the other balcony, and they're calling him out, and all of a sudden he pulls out a gun, and they start having a shootout, like right in the middle of these apartment complex. And this guy that I'm standing with shoots one of the Jamaicans' nephews in the stomach. And I'm like, why would you do that? Because I was friends with them too, Yeah. And the nephew, he was just in visiting that day. And I ran to go help him. I'll never forget. He was bleeding out. His name was Drew. I remember helping him out, trying to just keep him from bleeding. I ran and got the apartment, the lady from the apartments. She came out. She was trying to apply pressure, waiting for the ambulance and the police to get there. And I just remember that those Jamaicans pulled me into this apartment because they, here I am walking with this guy. That guy shoots the nephew. And then the day before, little did I know that guy was involved in a robbery where he robbed one of the customers. Him and a girl robbed a customer. And that's what he was trying to tell me was that he had just did a robbery. And they had robbed one of the clients. And the Jamaicans were at beef with him. So then they pulled me into this apartment. And I'll never forget these 2 Jamaicans. And they beat the daylights out of me. They beat me so bad that they literally wanted to kill me. I remember them trying to pluck my eyes out. They literally were trying to they were torturing me in a point to try to get me to confess that I was in on this robbery. And I just kept telling them, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking. And they just kept beating me until finally they ended up running to another apartment because they needed to get the dope out because now the police is coming up on the property. So I run out. I'm able to make it out. By the grace of God, I make it out and I run as far as I can. I remember calling the Dallas police to come. The lady at the Denny's called the police because I'm literally telling you, my eyes were so bloodied up, and everything. I mean, I was just so beat up. And I remember the police getting there, looking at me, made a report, and literally walked away.
That was it.
Didn't take me to the hospital. Didn't tell me, hey, where do you live at? You look like you're a kid. Let me take you home. Nothing. It was actually an actual customer that told me, you don't belong here. Where do your parents live? I'm going to take you to where you live at.
Heads up, small business owners. The ERC is a federal program designed to give you money for keeping the economy going during the pandemic. And with Lendio, it's easy to find out if you're eligible. If you qualify, you can get up to $26,000 for every employee you kept on your payroll in 2020 and 2021. This federal stimulus money won't last forever, so don't wait. Visit Lendio.com/tap in to learn more. That's lendio.com/TAPN. Okay, there's a link in the description. Click on the link in the description. Now back to the show.